he canceled on his first day in office the Keystone XL pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
which even the Natural Resources Defense Council admits would have delivered 850,000 barrels a day of oil to the U.S., which is more than the 600,000 we're importing under Biden from Russia. We could have supplanted all of that Russian oil if we just had the Keystone. He has done everything he can to not only embolden Russia, but also to make Europe serfs. He's stopping LNG exports. He's stopping new pipelines to LNG. He's holding up the permitting for new LNG terminals. He stopped a gas pipeline from Israel. He's doing everything he can, not only to hurt us, but to hurt Europe.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that a little bit last week too. And speaking of the Keystone Pipeline, I mean, it says here, this on ABC News, this was Jen Psaki last Sunday on This Week on ABC. The Chiron on the bottom there says Republicans call on Biden to restart the Keystone Pipeline. And this is Jen Psaki's, the communications director at the White House. This is her reaction to that idea.
On oil leases, what this actually justifies, in President Biden's view, is the fact that we need to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, on oil in general, and we need to look at other ways of having energy in our country and others. One of the interesting things, George, we've seen over the last week or so is that a number of European countries are recognizing they need to reduce their own reliance on Russian oil.
So
that's
pretty amazing.
That's absolutely false. That's not true. What Europe is doing now is Germany has approved just since the war started, 2 new LNG import terminals. Yeah. They want more gas from us in Australia and other places. They are trying to they're opening new coal plants, and they're trying to buy coal from Australia. They're importing more coal. Now, the fact is, what they've recognized, you got to understand, Europe is much farther down the pathway of green energy than the United States. What they've learned with this Russian debacle, but even before, as their lights flickered on and off or went out, as their factories had to shutter, as their prices rose dramatically, is that green energy ain't what it's cracked up to be. It's not cheaper. It's not more reliable. And so they're going back to good old fossil fuels. And if they can't get it from Russia, they're getting it from elsewhere. She just lied. That's not what Europe is doing. They're not doubling down on renewables. They're doubling down on coal.
Right. Now, here's another clip I'm going to have that Sterling, I'm going to make you sit out this one. I might just mute you because it's going to trigger you as badly as me. And I'd like Linnea to jump in here. But this is our energy secretary, Jennifer Granholm, who I don't believe had any expertise in energy policy whatsoever before she was appointed to that position. This is her seeming a little bit exasperated that people think that the dramatic changes in U.S. energy policy has any negative effects whatsoever.
But the bottom line is that this president and this administration are looking at every single tool to shield American families from the impact of rising energy prices. And we're working through an energy transition. And we've got to start by adding energy. And the reality is we have to take some time to get off of oil and gas. We recognize this. This is a transition.
So there you have it. Yeah. We're in a transition, and
meanwhile,
just suck it up and suffer. This was all to be expected, Linnea.
This whole idea of getting off of fossil fuels in order to stop our dependence on foreign oil, as opposed to just starting up our own policies and our own fossil fuel industry again and getting that up and running, is insane. And these people keep saying that, Keystone wouldn't have any effect on the prices. This stuff wouldn't have any effect on the prices. Biden energy policy couldn't possibly already have an effect on oil prices. Well, that's either a deliberate misunderstanding or a, tragic lack of understanding about oil futures and how these prices aren't regulated based on, what is happening 10 years from now, or what the prices now are affected by policies that will come into effect 10 years from now. they are reactive to current policy change that will have physical effects down the line.
So these guys are actually very serious. They expect us all to just suffer for as long as possible in order to save the planet. And I guess they've just come out and said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that happened this week in the middle of all this, while we're talking about transition, is what happened with the Postal Service. The Postal Service had a mandate from the Biden administration to replace all of their aging little trucks with electric vehicles. And the Postal Service said, no, we're not going to do it. We're going to get regular gasoline vehicles, because they can't have their motto be, neither rain nor dark nor sleet or whatever, and electric vehicles, the mail must go through. The problem is these electric vehicles would require charges in the middle of routes to get the mail through. And so mail delivery would suffer. And they simply said, no, we're not going to do it. And it was a real slap in the face to the Biden administration. But it also points to the fact that the practicality of, green energy and green electric vehicles and all this stuff just isn't there yet.
The mail service, actually USPS, what they actually said was, look, our service vehicles are 25 years old. We'd like to increase fuel efficiency. We'd like vehicles pretty quick, like now. And we're going to go out and purchase them now. And you know what? There's not a factory on earth that produces electric vehicles. But they did say at an addendum, we've got to purchase 130,000 vehicles pretty quickly. They did say we're going to purchase 5,000 of those are going to be electric vehicles. And if you give us $3.5 billion more dollars, we can add to that number. We're not going to replace all the other vehicles, but we can add to that number. I wonder how many more, another 5,000 out of the 130 or 80 they have to get. The point is, they're being realistic. They're being run by someone who used to be in business. It's not fantasy. It's not we make this stuff up.
And that's the problem with a lot of our people in Washington. A lot of the people that are in Washington are career politicians. That's all they know. They've never had to produce anything. They've never had to pay wages to anyone. They've never had to worry about getting supplies. None of that stuff. It just all sort of shows up at their front door because they live a gilded life in Washington.
Well, I mean, you said right. They say we have to suffer, Jim. We just have to suffer. But you know who's not suffering? How much suffering is Jeff Bezos doing? How much, Bill Gates, how much suffering is going on in his household because the price of food and fuel went up?
Right.
Al Gore, John, Mr. Tragedy that we're taking attention. The Ukraine war is taking attention away from climate change. Kerry, as he flies his private jet, he's not suffering. It's everybody else who doesn't earn millions of dollars each year.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could go all the way back to Barack Obama, his infamous interview with the San Francisco Examiner, when he said that under his administration, energy prices would necessarily skyrocket. And in other words, that was the intent. Gas has finally broken the $4 barrier per gallon in the gas station that I pass by every day on the way to work. I saw a story today in the Daily Mail. The headline is "Pain at the Pump. Americans are warned to budget for $5 a gallon gas as oil prices are surging." The average price for a gallon of gas right now in the United States is $3.72, and of course it's much higher in California. It's $4.80 a gallon is the average price in California. That's insane.
Actually, it's gone up now. It's over $5 overnight, literally.
Yeah, I mean, this is. Again, this is part of the plan. I mean, they actually think that we are going to be able to transition quickly into some kind of green utopia in which, we'll all be plugging in our cars. I guess, I don't know how we're going to get the power for that, since we're going to be shutting down we're not going to be building any more nukes. We're not going to be firing up any coal plants. We're going to get rid of natural gas. I mean, Linnea, they live in a fantasy world. I mean, you know how the energy economy in this country works, and there's just no connection between what they want and what they say and what the reality of the situation on the ground is.
Yep. Yeah, we're all going to be riding bullet trains in the future,
Oh, sure.
Yeah. In response to, the current energy situation, if I hear one more person say all we have to do is put in hydrogen pipelines, I don't know what I'm going to do. But, for the fossil fuel point, I don't think a lot of people realize, and people are going to start to realize that fossil fuel refining byproducts that become fertilizers that the entire world uses are already being severely impacted by the increased price of oil. So your food prices are going to skyrocket, not just because it takes much more money to fuel the trucks to bring your food to the supermarket or to fuel the tractors that are plowing the fields, but also in all those chemical products that have to be laid down in order to have the kind of farming technology or the industrial farming that we depend on now. All of that is going to be impacted by this.